Well, Inner Harbor has long been considered one of Baltimore's crown jewels. Over the years, though, the crown that was Harbor Place has tarnished. There's mutual agreement that the area as it stands now isn't entirely sustainable, but it's what the property should look like that is causing debate. Hi everyone, I'm Jason Newton. Welcome to 11 TV Hill. With the water, the proximity to downtown, and the beautiful views of Baltimore, there's a big push to revitalize the once vibrant Inner Harbor. Therein lies the big question. What should Harbor Place look like in 5, 10, or 15 years from now? What parts of the districts must change and which should stay the same? In the past week, Baltimore City Council advanced 3 bills related to the area's redevelopment. Ultimately, though, voters will decide in November whether to allow residential buildings as part of the proposal. This morning, we are taking a look at the debate that's become the talk of the city. But first, let's see how we got to this point.
I've never seen such spirit. Saw spirit and merchants I've never seen before, construction people, everyone.
To that fanfare, Harbor Place opened on July 2nd, 1980. It welcomed guests at the height of the mall era with a revolutionary design, big-name restaurant. And even attractions like the Fudgery, which gave way to musical legends Dru Hill. Now, though, tastes have changed. The old pavilions don't have much use, which is why there has been such a push to rethink how the city uses the prime real estate.
We want to make sure that this is a place that everyone in Baltimore is going to feel like belongs to them.
David Bramble's vision for the site includes a mix of retail, green space, and residential apartments. Depending on who you talk to, there's debate over if this is the right use of the area.
I'm born and raised in Baltimore, and it's not a good look for the actual residents of Baltimore.
The residents of Baltimore are not going to be able to afford to live in a place like this. Plus, they're going against the city council that wanted to keep this space for the public.
There's still plenty of discussions that need to be had before the first shovels go into the ground, and that's what Councilman Eric Costello is working on inside City Hall. Joining us now is Councilman Eric Costello. Good to see you, sir.
Thanks for having me, Jason.
Certainly. When I look at the plans, I mean, regardless of how you feel about the plans, period, I think we can all agree that the Harbor Place area just needs a refresh. It was great for the mall culture of the 80s, but now things have changed.
Yeah, look, Harbor Place was a model of waterfront redevelopment across the country when it was first built. But unfortunately, the property has really been driven into the ground, and we need to revitalize that area. It's a critically important area to the city.
When you guys have gone through a few votes, I think one dealt with the height of buildings at Harbor Place and some other things to make this project go forward. What stands out to you that's the main positive, do you think, for that area?
Well, I think really bringing density to the Inner Harbor, bringing people down there. So when you think about having people living down there, having people there 24/7, you think about some of the retail options that have been discussed, really displaying the best of what Baltimore has to offer and not so much a focus on, chain retail establishments or restaurants. I'm really excited about both of those things. I think they will contribute to a safer situation in the Inner Harbor. And I think they will really, in terms of attracting local retail and that best of what Baltimore has to offer, will really help revitalize the area and make it vibrant once again.
And you mentioned safer because I think that's what comes to people's mind a lot, the safety of the Inner Harbor. How does it lend to that, do you think?
Well, just having more people down there, having it activated, more eyes and ears on the street and on the promenade, I think is going to be incredibly helpful.
The process getting here, I think some of the criticism that comes, which I guess from my end, I don't totally understand. Some folks are saying they haven't heard enough about it, but I think there have been a lot of, public comment periods in forums throughout the city. Do you think more of those forums should be held, or do you understand the criticism at all?
Look, I understand and appreciate the criticism. My role isn't to convince anyone that they should be supportive or not. My role in this process has really been to bring people together. We've hosted a number of large-scale forums to get information out there and to respond to constituents who have questions, and really to make sure that we're all working from the same set of facts. As long as we're working from the same set of facts, folks are going to be able to make an informed decision about whether or not they support this project. And ultimately, one of the great things about this is that everyone in the city is going to have a voice. and going to be able to exercise that through the ballot box in November. So I think that, there's been an enormous amount of community outreach that has occurred. We've had an opportunity to go through that process for the past 7 or 8 months. We've gotten a lot of great feedback. We've gotten criticism. We've got compliments along the way. And I think that community feedback has really helped drive the proposal to make it a better proposal for the entire city.
There's one candidate for mayor who says he's just going to block it if it comes that this isn't happening under his regime. But something has to happen at some point for that area, yeah?
Well, first, the person that you're referencing legally can't do that. And I think it's important that when people are running for office, that they're honest about what they can and can't do.
Sure.
That's the first thing. And again, ultimately, it's going to be up to the voters of the city. And I think that's the way it should be for something of this magnitude.
If you looked in your crystal ball and looked to say 15 years from now, describe to me what you hope to see in that Harbor Place area reimagined.
An incredibly vibrant Inner Harbor area, something that is accessible to everyone, something that's inclusive, that anyone from Baltimore City or a visitor to our city could look at and say, you know what, I belong here. Something that will give people an incredible experience, that will create memories for them and their families and their friends, something that will be talked about for decades to come. So really excited about this opportunity for the Inner Harbor.
All right, Councilman Costello, good to see you as always. Thank you, sir.
Thanks for having me, Jason. Appreciate it.
Take care.